Deputy President. A couple of weeks ago, the leader of the Greens, Senator Natale, gave a nationally televised address to the Press Club. He said that one of Australia's most important wealth and export-generating industries, in his words, is on the way out. No prizes for guessing which industry he was talking about. It was the coal industry. Senator Natale said that, and I quote, "Thermal coal in Australia is in structural decline and no one is more exposed than Australia." The Institute of Energy Economics and Financial Analysis reported that our major export markets for thermal coal are disappearing and there are no new growth markets appearing on the horizon. End quote. Well, the Institute of Energy Economics and Financial Analysis is not an independent research body. It's a renewable energy think tank that is funded by large trusts such as the Rockefeller Foundation that have a history of opposing fossil fuels. Their work is not independent, and in this instance, at least, it clearly does not accord with the facts. Their story about coal is a fairy tale. This is not a matter of hiding a decline. The figures are all out there for everyone to see. Our coal sector is not in decline. Last year, we in fact produced and exported a record volume of coal. When it comes to this record performance of the Australian coal industry, the Greens Party are acting like a bunch of denialists. Australian coal production was 491 million tonnes in 2014, an increase of almost 5% on 2013 levels. Production volumes have been steadily rising over the past decade and increased at an average annual rate of more than 3% over that period. Total volumes increased from 363 million tonnes in 2004 to 491 million tonnes in 2014, an average increase of around 13 million tonnes a year. If only the Greens' logic could be applied to my waistline, Mr Acting Deputy President. I have put a few kilos on the last year, but according to the logic of the Greens, I've actually lost weight, and so happy days for me. Australia's coal export volumes are indeed expected to increase even further from this 400 million tonnes today to around 433 million tonnes over the next 5 years and boost our national income by $200 billion. This growth means that Australia is forecast to overtake Indonesia as the world's largest coal exporter in 2017. But of course, that does not mean that growth is always smooth or that prices will not fluctuate. Global coal prices have been at multi-year lows, but they remain much higher than they were at the beginning of this century. That is the world of commodity prices. They are volatile. Leading energy forecasters agree that the continued industrialisation and urbanisation of Asia will drive enduring growth in coal demand. The International Energy Agency estimates that the world will use 1 billion tonnes more coal in 2019 than today. It explicitly states that the danger of stranded assets for the coal industry is, quote, limited. The IEA conclude that even under its most stringent climate change policy scenarios, no oil or gas field currently in production would shut down prematurely, and only the oldest and least efficient coal mines would close. It also expects coal to continue to be the biggest single source of electricity generation. In 2030, coal is expected to fuel 10,200 terawatt-hours of electricity, around 31% of global generation, and nearly twice as much as hydro, 4 times more than wind and 8 times more than solar. The conclusion of our own, of Australia's official energy forecaster, is that China's energy and climate change policies are unlikely to result in a rapid shift away from coal. Australia's official energy forecaster says that it is unlikely that India will be able to cease thermal coal imports within the next 3 years, as widely claimed. Certainly, we have heard concerns about a short-term decline in coal demand, but these are largely short-term issues. Growth estimates in Chinese coal use between 2012 and 2040 vary from 70% for an MIT study done in 2014 to over 50% from an International Energy Outlook study done a couple of years ago. But even putting China aside, there is enormous potential for increased coal demand in other countries of Asia. I have right here, an audit that has been done of coal power stations either under construction or proposed for a selection of Asian countries. Those countries include India, Vietnam, South Korea, Philippines and Taiwan. These are the plants that are under construction in Asia. More than 750 individual units, coal-fired power units, some of them part of one station. They together, collectively, amount to more than 500,000 megawatts of extra power capacity that are projected to be supplied with new supplies of coal over the next few decades. All of these power stations, these are the facts that the Greens want to ignore. That increased amount of capacity of coal capacity, 500,000 megawatts of extra coal-fired power capacity in Southeast Asia, will mean that there will be an increased demand for coal, of just under 2 billion tonnes of coal per year to supply that capacity. An extra 2 billion tonnes of coal per year. Going back to the figures I mentioned earlier, we currently in Australia produce just shy of 500 million tonnes a year and export just over 400 million tonnes a year. So the increased demand swamps even our own total production of coal today. There will be an increased demand of 2 billion tonnes, not even including China, just Southeast Asia, 2 billion tonnes of increased demand. And we, as a country, only produce around 500 million tonnes today. We will not be able to meet that increased demand, but we have an enormous opportunity to continue to increase coal production, as we have in the past 10 years, to help meet the burgeoning economies of Southeast Asia and help them deliver electricity to more of their peoples. We also want to take that opportunity because we know that Australian coal is much more efficient than coal from other countries. Australian coal leads to lower carbon emissions for any given level of electricity generated. Australian black coal from Queensland is the most energy efficient in the world in terms of energy output per unit of coal burned. Therefore, the most efficient outcome for the world's environment is to use more of Queensland's coal and less coal from overseas countries. Australian thermal coal exports are of the highest quality coal found anywhere in the world, with an energy content above 5,500 kilocalories per kilogram, which compares favourably to Indonesian coal, which has an estimated range of between 4,200 and 5,200 kilocalories per kilogram. New mines in places like the Galilee Basin should be developed as quickly as possible. It would create jobs in Queensland and reduce emissions internationally. So anti-coal activists trying to stop production in Australia are doing a disservice to the global environment. Even the International Panel on Climate Change is on board with this view. It states that without a clean coal solution, a global solution to climate change would be more than 130% more expensive. It would push up mitigation costs and would likely lead to more people being in poverty. There would be lower economic growth and less opportunity to protect the natural environment. Last year, the chair of the IPCC dismissed the idea that fossil fuels will become redundant. He said that new technologies will ensure that, and I quote, fossil fuels can continue to be used on a large scale. And, Mr Acting Deputy President, this ethical case for the use of fossil fuels is often overlooked. We should always remember we're very lucky in this country. We're very lucky to all have access to cheap and affordable electricity, although it's a bit more expensive than it was in the past. But according to the World Bank, over half the world's population, around 4 billion people, have limited access to energy at all, at any price. Rachel Kite, who's the Vice President of the World Bank, said recently that over 1.2 billion people in the world are without access to any electricity, and most of them are concentrated in about a dozen countries in Africa and Asia. Another 2.8 billion rely on wood or other biomass for cooking and heating, resulting in indoor and outdoor pollution attributable to 4.3 million deaths a year. This energy poverty is contributing to these more than 4 million premature deaths, and we have a responsibility as a country with great access to cheap, efficient and affordable forms of energy to export those to these countries to help them prevent such deaths in the future. We should not deny the benefits to other nations that we have been able to benefit from, given our country's exploitation of fossil fuels. As I said, we are a lucky country. We are a lucky country that have had these cheap and accessible energy sources close to our sources of population. They have helped drive the development of this country. They have helped put us to where we are today, and they've indeed given us the luxury. They've given us the luxury to be able to better protect our environmental assets and have the resources and income to do so. And great that they have. And the best solution to help improve the environment all around the world is to make sure other countries have access to such energy in a cheap and affordable way, because, Mr Acting Deputies, we have a choice. We can either have cheap energy or we will have cheaper wages for some of the poorest people in the world, and I personally would choose cheap energy, high wages and coal.
Thank you, Senator Canavan. Senator Dastyari.